It's
Yay!
Pride Month.
It is one of the best
Woo!
months of the year, if you ask
Yes.
me.
Um, well, thank you for coming on the pod today. I would love for you to introduce yourself,
Yeah.
and then I'll introduce myself a little bit afterwards, just in case.
Yeah. So, hey, everyone. Thank you to Steph for having me on here. Very excited. My name is Jabria Craft. I on Instagram am the Crafted Can Coach. I feel like people know me as that or that
Yes,
dope coach.
for sure.
But I'm a cannabis coach. I talk about cannabis all the time, and we'll get into some of that in this little session. Um, but I am from Virginia, which is, I don't know if that's a fun fact, but I've lived here my whole life. So.
I am Stephanie, the intuition dietitian. I'm a dietitian that specializes in neurodivergence, specifically talking about accessible nutrition and under and overeating, binge eating, and I talk a lot about cannabis use and the overlaps between cannabis use, neurodivergence, and binge eating. So me and Jabria are like this when it comes to our content, our recommendations, our audiences. I'm constantly pushing people to follow her, and I've learned a lot from her. So I couldn't think of a better guest to come on and talk about cannabis, all things cannabis related. Thought it'd be a cute, gentle start to this episode to share a little bit about our personal stories with cannabis. I honestly like
Yeah.
haven't ever really given a strong and like breakdown of my introduction to cannabis use, and how it's kind of slowly morphed into an intentional relationship. But I'll let you go first, Jabria. Maybe I'll just like chime in here and there. I'd love to
Yeah.
hear kind of your personal story and coming to where you are now in terms of like it being part of your wellness practices.
Yeah, no, I'm actually really intrigued to hear your story, so please
Yeah, I will. I
fill
will.
yours in as well. So I started using cannabis recreationally, like end of high school, early college. It was one of those things where like I loved the way it felt when I could get my hands on it. I would always
Right.
go for it, but like was not consistently consuming. And then I think it was like 2017, 2018. So I graduated college in 2015. So it's like a few years post grad. And
Yeah.
I was in grad school and I started using it. I had like little Friday rituals where I lived in Williamsburg, Virginia, which is a very boring town for anyone who
Yep.
knows where that is. And so I did not go out a ton on the weekends. And so I had a little Friday night ritual where I would watch a scary movie and like smoke like literally half of a bowl and be high off my ass and would like do takeout. It was like my own little like Friday treat because I was like super broke and could order takeout back then
Right.
either. Um, and so that's when it started becoming I didn't even really see that as a ritual at the time, but in retrospect, it definitely was. But that's when
Yeah.
it started becoming more consistent.
Right.
And then COVID, 2020 was a wild year for a lot of reasons. It was also the year that my mom was sick.
Yeah.
And so I had moved back home in like the end of 2019, actually, when she first got sick, right before um, COVID obviously did what it did. But I was her caretaker for the majority of that time, especially like March through June of that year. And cannabis became like a daily like decompression.
Yeah.
Anyway, it did like, and I'm curious if you can relate to this. It did this like kind of slow morphing into a daily habit where it started as just like, okay, I normally smoke on Fridays. I'm gonna smoke Saturday and Sunday too because it's the weekend. And then
Right.
it was like, okay, I got these weekends, and then I was like, well, Thursday is like basically the weekend. So then it kept going up from there to the point where I was consuming every day. But
Yep.
it was a slow build
Yep.
that
Mine was
way.
similar. Mine was totally a slow build as well. And like I had a passive experience with the building because it was dependent on my roommate who she'll watch this. I know she
Okay.
will. Her name's Danica.
Hi,
Danica
Danica.
Carver on Instagram. She's an amazing photographer. Please follow her. But she was a daily user when we started living together and it just kind of became like any day that I was off. We were attached at the hip also. That's very relevant. So it was like wake up in my pajamas like what are you doing? Oh, I have a lot of work to do. She's editing all day. I'm working on my business all day. We're on the couch together. We're rotting. We're smoking. So it started
Yeah.
it started like that any day I had off. I was like she would just I wasn't even buying it myself for a long time when I got to the point where I was almost daily using because it was like she was just passing the bong to me. So I was just like, I okay,
That's
and started
ideal.
using it. Yeah, started using it that way for a while, and then somewhere along the lines, I started to be like, well, I should probably buy an eighth and contribute every once in a while. So I started like buying it, and then all of a sudden, I was buying it myself, smoking it myself,
Mhm.
and I would say I had a very messy introduction into use because of that. Like it wasn't structured by any means. It was kind of like here and there, and then all of a sudden it was every day, and zero thought about like
Oh yeah, I
intentionality,
know.
zero thought about like how much I was doing.
Nope.
Many times I was like, I am so fucking high, what am I doing? But I definitely used it similarly to you in a very stressful part of my life. In 2019 my brother passed away, so it was like
Mm,
post that I was like using it a lot more recreationally and using it when
yeah.
like as a decompression tactic. And then I also 2020 leading into 2021 is when I was studying for my RD exam, and so I was like stressed out of my effing mind like studying, so it was
Mm,
something that I started engaging with to turn my brain off essentially. Like I was like, okay,
yeah.
I'm done studying. Like once I hit the bong, like no more studying,
Right.
type of thing. So that was kind of and then that didn't always go well because then I'd get like super anxious about the exam as soon as I started smoking. So I wasn't studying, but I was like now anxious about it. So there was like a lot of messiness before I started to
Mm,
step back and be like, wait, why am I doing this? When do I want to do it? What's the point of this? I don't want to feel like I'm on the verge of a panic attack every time that I'm using. So that was around like 2020, and then or 2021. And since then, I've gone through a lot of different paths to find intentionality. I'm curious, like, after you got to a point of daily use, what kind of happened for you?
yeah. Also, I want to revisit that the grief piece that I think
Oh,
we both like.
100%.
That's something that immediately was like, oh yeah, we I forgot that we have that shared experience as well. Um, but what was your question? Sorry.
Once you got to a point of daily use, like,
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah.
because it sounds like it wasn't at that point even really like a super intentional.
No.
Yeah,
Not even a little bit. I always
yeah,
joke to say that I was puffing like a chimney because literally like would roll a king cone and would probably do at least one, if not like one and a half of those a day. Which like,
yeah.
and we could talk about like the
We
amount itself is not the
right.
problem, you
No,
know?
right,
It was the way that I was using it. I was not thinking about it. It was like a wake and bake
right.
every day sort of
Which
thing.
I feel like is so like this neurodivergent experience. Like I feel like this is how most of us would describe our introduction into using it is like, oh, it was like recreational, and then I started to be like, I like this a lot, and then I started to be like, anytime I want to relax or turn my brain off, I'm gonna do that, and then like
Hmm.
all of a sudden you're doing it any chance you can
Anytime.
because it's giving you this level of like relief, or
The
you're
dopamine hit, all that. Yeah.
dopamine hit 100%. That's the dopamine, and the act of smoking is a thing for me personally. I think we've talked about this before. I talked about this with Untamed Herbalist as well. We were talking about like you're gonna have to rip a J from my cold dead hands. Like I'm sorry. Like it's just like it just is what it is. Like I'm aware of the cons of it, but like there's something to it. But
There
I've heard
is.
I've heard that experience a lot from neurodivergent folks specifically. Is like, oh wow, this is like doing something for me, and I'm not in a place where I'm intentional about it yet, but like it's like just becomes really habitual really quickly because it is
Yeah.
the quick source of dopamine. If you're hyperactive or have a lot going on in your head, it can be a great way to check out. So yeah, how did you kind of, what was your introduction into more intentionality behind it?
Yeah. So I like was super griefy. Obviously, my mom was the most important relationship in my life at the
Yeah,
time and arguably still is. Um, and she was my best friend. She was where a lot of my like identity was wrapped up in and like who I was, who I thought I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, all that kind of stuff. So it was like a massive, I mean, obviously losing your mom at any point is rough, but I was
yeah.
like 25,
No, you were, the
26.
age was relevant.
Yeah, like your
Yeah,
20s are when I feel like so much already heavy shit happens and you're like
right,
figuring out who you are and that's a lifelong journey. But anywho, it was disruptive to say the least.
right.
And so I was smoking a ton and it was helping me like kind of decenter the heaviness of my grief. Like it helped me just like live with it, honestly.
Right.
To a point where it didn't like completely swallow me. But it wasn't until I started therapy in maybe like August of that year, I think. So it was August of 2020, and I still have the same therapist. love that bitch
Wow.
down.
Love that for you.
She's amazing. And she asked me, because I was really nervous about talking to her about weed. I was like,
Yeah.
is she gonna immediately
Yeah,
discharge me? Is
same.
she
I had
gonna
a therapist at the time. She had no idea I was smoking at the time.
Yeah, and I'm like,
Yep.
because they slap like cannabis use disorder on like real quick, and once that's on your
Right.
record, like you can actually be really fucked trying to get
Right.
mental health services. Um, and so I was really nervous about telling her, but she was super cool about it.
Right.
And the first thing she asked me was, she was like, "Well, why do you use it? Like, what does it help you with?" And I had quite literally never asked myself that before,
Yeah.
which in retrospect is kind of wild. But it was the first time that I paused and
You're like,
like,
cause I like it.
right. I was like, I like being
The
high.
fuck?
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But like at that point, it very much was already way more than just being high. It helps me sit with my grief. It helps me calm my mind down. It helps me connect with my body. It helps
Right.
me do all of these things that are normally a struggle for me as a response to all of my life experiences, right? Like
Right.
the neurodivergence and all of those things.
Yeah.
Um, and so when I started seeing her was also when I started she had me doing like breath work practices and like just doing more like somatic work as a part
Yeah.
of she sent me a lot of resources on that. And I started
Which
doing
is
yoga and things. Go
also,
ahead.
not to interrupt, but the somatic part, I just did an episode. I just filmed a podcast episode with a somatic therapist about neurodivergence and
Nice.
somatics. So if you're
Oh,
listening to
fuck
that and you're
yeah.
like, ooh, somatics, just know there's an episode on that coming. Anyways,
Hell
good.
yeah. No, I love that little tease and I'm excited to listen to it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that was really helpful. And it was the first time that I remember doing yoga for high for the first time. And I was like, I
Right.
have never felt my body like this ever
Yeah.
before.
No, what is that is I also relate to that experience. That the thing that I cut out of the beginning of our recording where I was talking about I lived in Long Beach and there was like um daily free yoga that overlooks the water and it's like on a patch of
Mhm.
grass. Um
That sounds
one time I was like, I'm gonna smoke before I feel crazy. And then I went and I was like, that was fucking crazy. Like that was I had never
Yeah.
experienced something like that. I was like, oh. I was like, so this is what like those little micro experiences I feel like were what made me be like, oh, this is supposed to be like a tool. This is supposed to be like something that has the potential to really benefit me. It's not just like
Yeah.
something I'm doing for funsies with my roommate to be
Yep.
like naughty almost.
Yeah, no, I think I saw it as like the alternative to alcohol
Same,
initially, of like, oh,
totally.
like it was very recreational, it feels good, it was
I
very
also, for me personally, I have a history of addiction in my family, so I'm very like I've
okay.
always been very hyper vigilant about that. I really don't drink very often. I don't think I got that gene just in general, but like I also was always like in my early 20s, like it's gonna come for me. Like I gotta be on my
Mhm.
10 toes about it. So I think that was also part of like as soon as I got to a point where I was like craving it daily, I was like, well, what's going on? I don't want to be an addict. So I think that was what kind of sparked my questioning around it too. Was like I don't want to be complacent in behaviors. Oh, love the fair life. Love the fair life.
You put me onto these.
Love the fair life. I just had one for breakfast this morning, period. I love them so much. I wish they would sponsor me. Anyways, but no, I
Speaking into
definitely
existence.
I definitely like got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm using it. Like not I don't feel necessarily addicted, but like
Hmm.
from an outside perspective, someone might say that I am and like that in and of itself, which was stigma obviously, but like that in and of itself made me start to be like, okay, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah, and I think a lot of us who consume cannabis feel that, but
Yeah.
especially neurodivergent.
Yeah.
I think there is this kind of like because we statistically tend to use it more than, neurotypical people. Also, queer people tend to use it more. Like
Yep.
almost like every level of
Marginalization and
yeah, there's
yeah,
it's gonna increase your prevalence of
right.
cannabis users in that demographic. Um, and I think there are a lot of us, especially who like fit in those intersections, that like feel this like heaviness of the stigma because I think we often use it more, so that means we're enjoying it more. We might be getting more out of it. Like I think it hits us extra hard because it's like, all right, this thing is helping me, but I shouldn't be using it.
Well, I
And I'm
also
using it in
think
a way that doesn't help. Like, you know, it's a lot of things kind of happening all at the same time.
I think that that's also just a lot of times how we internalize anything that we have like a strong like dopamine stimulating relationship with. Like I hear language around being addicted to things all the time with my clients.
Mm,
Addicted to sugar. I'm addicted to video games. I'm addicted to this. And it's like, okay, hold on. Like we need to like define addiction first of
right.
all. Like let's not like just because you love it and crave it doesn't mean it's an addiction.
Right.
Even though not to invalidate if you feel like you have a sugar addiction, that's a whole other thing. But I can guarantee you it's not like a chemical addiction. But I think that that's like the neurodivergent experience in general is like because we get such strong hits of dopamine off of certain things and we start to subsequently crave them very strongly and then often develop relationships where our emotional safety depends on these things, then like it does feel addictive. Like it feels like, okay, well, chemical
Yep.
addiction aside, I'm fiending.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. And I think it also makes it harder to create an intentional relationship with it because it feels very all or nothing. Like a lot of us, at least I
100,
definitely struggle with that sense of like all or nothing thinking.
100%.
Um, and so anytime there is that question of like, do I need to change habits? It's like I gotta quit. Like I can't use this anymore. At least it's
Right.
I hear from people all the time.
I also think my that showed up for me too, even just in this move, because I've definitely like had to reassess my relationship with cannabis since I moved. And for anyone who's curious, I used to live in Long Beach, California, and I used to work at a hospital, like a day job, part time, and then I did my business on the side. So I had a lot more structure then, and like the pockets of time where I was able to use cannabis were just like inherently more limited. And
Mhm.
now I'm here in the Midwest. I work during the day, but like how many calls I have is very different day to day. Some days I have zero calls. Like I have a lot more freedom and ability to smoke. And my initial reaction when I moved here was like, I'm just gonna do it on the weekends.
Oh yeah,
Like
you set up that boundary immediately that's based in nothing.
based on nothing. Like I was just like, well, and my boyfriend works full time, and so for him that is kind of his routine. Like he likes to use on the weekends. He doesn't like to use on the weekdays because he doesn't sleep as well sometimes, and yada yada. But
Okay.
so I was like, okay, yeah, like this is my like I'll do that with him. Like this is my weekends. Like I want to make sure I'm like being intentional, thinking that was. And then it got to a point when I was like, well, why am I using it though? Because like if I'm trying to connect with the intention, like the intention doesn't dissipate just because it's a Thursday.
Right.
Like, what does that actually
If
have to
only.
do? What
Right.
does that actually have to do with the intention behind it? So that was like a readjustment. So I totally relate to the all or nothing kind of like, oh, well, if I'm gonna, I have to just stop altogether. Like, if I want to change the way that I'm interacting with this, then like this thing is like you, once you label it as being a bad thing,
Yep.
right, then it's like, this is a bad thing. And it's like, well, wait, why?
Exactly. Well, I
How?
remember the first time I smoked during the workday during, I think this was in 2021. I think I waited a while before I did that. But I remember it actually really helped me. I was working on like I hate spreadsheets. I
Yeah.
was working on a spreadsheet with my old job, and it helped me like lock in because I get like nauseous when I work on spreadsheets. I don't know what that, I don't know if it's like a tryptophobia sort of thing. Um, but I normally it takes me a long time to do the task that it was like an annual thing I had to do, and it took a couple of days.
We
And
could
I was
not
able
be more
to,
opposite. I love a spreadsheet.
oh my gosh, look, if I've literally been trying to figure out how everything that it would go in a spreadsheet can be in any other kind of form than a
I
spreadsheet.
will make something a spreadsheet that doesn't need to be a spreadsheet,
Oh
and I'll
my
color
gosh.
code it, and I will find a way to make it into a graph also.
Well, I like a graph. I'll
I
get on
love a
board there.
graph. I love a
That's
graph.
hilarious.
The first time you started using it during work.
Yeah. It really helped me like lock in and get this task
Yeah.
done. Like it helped me not deal because I when I say nausea, I mean like physical nausea. It
Yeah.
helped me deal with that part of it. It helped me just not be like as stressed about it of like, when you're especially if I'm an avoider, like I avoid tasks like crazy. And so to be able to excuse me, kind of push all of that to the side and just like
Yeah.
focus on something.
Also, like as an incentive, right? Like, ugh, I have to do this task I'm dreading. What if I like,
Just a little puff puff. But
yeah,
it was the first time that I did that because I thought I was like I essentially was doing it as an avoidant thing of like, oh, I'll just get high and then maybe I won't be able to do it. And the fact that I was able to do it was this. really opened up a lot for me of like, wait a second,
Oh my
this
God,
actually helped
same.
me.
Yes, this is how what made me realize that I needed to stop doing the this is only on the weekend thing is when I every time I smoked, I would want to work. And I was like,
Mm,
why am I getting all these content like the creative parts of my work? Obviously, I wasn't like
yeah.
I would be like, wait, like, and I'm having a bunch of content ideas. And then my boyfriend would be like, why are you on your phone? It's 11 p.m. Like, why are you working? And I'm like, I'm just like getting this rush of creativity. I'm
Yeah.
like having all these insights. Like, I want to like do stuff. And that's when I started to be like, okay, well, if every time I'm smoking, I'm like having that experience where I want to be working, then why am I telling myself I can't do it with on a work day? Like, wait, what?
Exactly. Especially when
Yeah,
you get to set your own like work day
right, right.
standards and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
very similar experience in that in terms of like enjoying some of those tasks that otherwise feel a little bit like pulling teeth
Yeah.
and
Which is
being able
quite
to
nice.
focus more,
Yeah.
actually.
I'd say I also like started when I learned because one of the biggest things when I started realizing that it was helping with yoga and connecting to my body and like all of the work and all that kind of stuff, I got really curious about like what's actually like how does weed work? Like what actually happens in the body?
And
Because
this
I
is
was
where
a
my expertise ends.
and that and that's okay.
And this is why you're here.
Yeah. But it was also like the fact that like okay, there are like 10 things that are rushing through my mind right now. I want to say them all. Um I got really curious about what was happening in the body. I was a kinesiology major in college, and human body functioning is something I've always been really interested in. And I remember trying to do some cursory research on Google of like how does weed like why does weed get you high? And
Right.
of course, anytime you type in any question around weed,
Like, get
it's
help.
like yeah, truly, literally a help hotline will come at the top of Google, and then
They're
it's
like,
like
you have a problem.
yeah, that's like
Yeah.
National Substance Abuse Hotline, like all of these kinds of things. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, that's not, doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Be looking
Right.
at information. But then
Right.
when I finally started digging a little bit more, I was like, okay, maybe I need to give CBD a try. And then I learned about the endocannabinoid system and was like, holy fucking shit. Like, can I
Yeah.
curse? Sorry.
Oh, please. Oh, you can absolutely curse on
Because
this.
I just
Okay.
curse. But I was just like mind blown.
Yeah.
There was like this entire system in our bodies, and I learned about every single body system, and I was like, I don't understand why we
You're like,
didn't.
never heard of her.
Never heard of her, not a single fucking time, not even a
Yeah.
whisper.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's actually crazy that we did not talk about this in any of the
Yeah.
classes I took about human functioning or human
Yeah.
body systems. Um, and then I was like, okay, well, this is really interesting. Started getting more into like edibles and things like that, and was like, what other
Yeah.
forms can I
Right.
consume in? I started taking CBD for the first time. Actually, through my therapist or through my psychiatrist's office, they had like a CBD
Oh, that's interesting.
consultant, which was really cool. Um, and then like also at the beginning with CBD, especially, I was like, this is bullshit. Really didn't think it worked. I was like, this is weed light.
Yeah.
Um,
You're like,
but
I want to be high.
yeah. And at the time I was like, okay, what gets me high is what helps me. I still wasn't quite
Right.
clear on like all the other pieces of it. But that was like a year's worth of me kind of just like
Diving in.
tiptoeing around the rabbit hole and then fell directly into the bottom of it.
Right.
And then
I just ordered um Cannabicem's book. Um
oh yeah.
I pre-ordered
Reefer
it actually.
Wellness.
Yes, Reefer Wellness. Yeah, I pre-ordered it, so I didn't just order it. I ordered it in January. But it comes mid-June.
That's
So
exciting.
I feel like I'm gonna learn a lot from that book.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's definitely where like my expertise ends, is like don't know anything about the endocannabinoid system other than that it exists. So I'm excited to dive into Reefer Wellness. I feel like that'll be a
Yeah.
great book. And it's big, and for some reason, like the fact that it's like big, like it's like a picture book size is like very, I feel
Hmm.
like exciting to me. I feel like I'll be able
No,
to
I'm
dive into that.
very, very pumped for that.
Yeah.
Also, she's great. Dr. Riley Kirk.
Yes, thank
Fantastic
you, Riley Kirk. I
person.
couldn't remember her last name.
Yeah. And she works with Dr. Miyabe Shields. I don't
Yes,
know the name
also
of their
follow her.
lab. Also, they're they them pronouns.
Oh, they them.
But yeah, they're super fucking dope. They wrote that book. I don't have it with me. I normally have it right here. But what's it called? High Hopes. Have you read it?
Uh-uh.
Oh my God. It's really good.
Quest for why have I not heard of this? Oh my God. Quest of a queer neurodivergent stoner scientist.
Yeah, this one.
Yes.
So good. Also, one thing I really love about it that's very specific, but it's got big font. And
Yeah,
I
I
love
love
big font.
that. I
I'm
love
like,
that.
they wrote this knowing who their audience was.
That's what I said. I was excited for Dr. Riley's because I was like, I love that it's gigantic. Like it's like big face. I love that. Um, both of them, if you guys aren't following those two scientists, highly recommend. I'll put
Oh
them
yeah.
in the show notes for you guys because I definitely think we need more exposure to this information. So, how did discovering the endocannabinoid system and learning, going down that rabbit hole change the way that you approached your use?
Mm. I think it legitimized cannabis for me in a way that it
Yeah,
hadn't been
like
before.
validated.
Yeah, it was like, okay, no, this really is medicine. Like the fact that it can work in so many different ailments, in so many different systems in the body makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I used to always think of it kind of as like, I feel like a lot of the ways that like, especially like old school stoners talk about cannabis is like, it's this, like, what's the guy from the movie? Okay, hold on.
Cheech and Chong.
No, 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 no. This is,
I'm like the guys. What
it's
guys?
the, Windex. What the fuck is that movie? My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Oh my
Have you seen
gosh.
that? Okay, so it's like the dad in Big Fat Greek Wedding with the fucking Windex saying this will fix everything.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I feel like
Yes.
that's how they talk about cannabis all the time, and it never
Yeah.
made sense to me. I was like, this is just stoners trying to justify
Right.
their cannabis use.
Right.
And I'm like, oh no, they're actually super fucking right.
Yeah.
And like again, not that it is a band-aid or it's a fix for everything for everyone, but it does have a lot of great uses.
And
Um,
the variety, I think, is the takeaway, right? That it isn't just like a
yeah.
singular function, like it can be medicinal for so many different ailments.
Mhm. And it's very adaptogenic. So, like it will go to the areas that your body needs it most, which
Yeah.
is also really like it's a very smart kind of medicine as well.
Yeah.
But learning about the ECS, which is the shorthand for endocannabinoid system, definitely kind of like I said, legitimized, affirmed, validated the
Yeah.
fact that I was using this legitimate or like could be using it legitimately, whatever
Yeah.
that even means. Um, and then it was like, okay, well, how does it work in the body? Like, how do we, like, why does this sometimes get me high, but this doesn't? Like, sometimes edibles hit super hard, but like this does, like just trying to figure out some of that stuff and then learn
Yeah.
about how different consumption methods like kick in and how long they last and how they work. And then that really opened up more around like I said, like CBD, CBG, like other cannabinoids. Then learned about terpene profiles and was like, sativa and indica are bullshit. Like, why are we still using these labels?
I learned that from you.
Oh, yay!
Yeah.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
terpenes
always just
are.
kind of, yeah. Terpenes are something that I've learned from you and that I've relayed to my clients a lot in the conversations about like hunger and things.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, terpenes are, I always say they're the ones that are steering. Cannabinoids, like, are the engine of your experience, but terpenes are steering the wheel for sure.
That's so interesting.
Because I guess it was a while. Like, I started learning about the endocannabinoid system probably in like 2022. And then I signed up for a class to learn how to talk, like, teach people about the endocannabinoid
Right.
system through the Cannabis Coaching Institute. Shout out to them.
Love.
Um, And then they did a coaching program that was launching right after, and I was like, that's it. That's what I
Yeah.
want to do. Because I like the way that it connected, like, how does cannabis work in the body? It's like, how do we use it for our wellness? And how
Right.
do we use it in a way that actually serves us?
Yeah.
That program was much more focused on like symptom specific. So, like, you have anxiety, like, how do I treat that? You have this, how do we treat that? While also talking about other wheels of wellness as well.
Yeah.
But what I really love, and this is because of how my experience, and I think a lot of other people's has been, is like cannabis opens us up to so much more than our current worldview typically sees or allows or like
Yeah.
is downloading. And I
Yeah.
feel like it has just shifted my perspective on so many things and like radically changed my life. I always like
Yep.
jokingly, but very seriously say like cannabis and therapy saved my life.
Yeah.
And it has been probably the single-handed biggest tool as a part of my like growth journey over the last 5 years.
I feel like and this goes for both like negative and positive things that are you're experiencing in life. I feel like a lot of times, and this has been my personal experience, but I've noticed it also in clients a lot that like cannabis use can just like kind of bring to the surface what is already there and brewing, which was definitely a function that it served for me in my grief. Like
Mhm.
also, if you relate to like being a binge eater at all, it will exacerbate those things often, but it gets way too much of the blame for it when it's almost never that. It's like there are other root causes at play, and don't get me wrong, right? The type that you're using and the practices you have can again exacerbate binge eating tendencies, but like most of the time there are root causes at play, and the weed is like bringing them to the surface or exacerbating what's already happening. So that's how I've experienced it, and a lot of my clients I feel like have too. Is like it makes you confront things that maybe you aren't. And as a neurodivergent person specifically, like I am out of my body a lot. Like I am not present often. I'm like super mentally hyperactive, and it takes a lot for me
Mhm.
to connect. So like I found that that's a huge function of my use is like bringing me back to earth literally.
Yeah, like actually grounding yourself like in your physical body, which is
Yeah.
something that like I first like, especially in the beginning of not even my cannabis journey, but even just like starting to hear more of that like language. I feel like that started becoming a thing that people were talking about more. Um, and I like didn't understand that concept because I had never experienced it. And
Yeah.
then like again, like there was the yoga and weed the first time I did that, that I was like, holy shit, like when you are physically in your body, like you obviously can feel it and tell, but like
Yeah.
it's beautiful and like it's so grounding and it's
Yeah.
so like at least for me always feels really
Right.
gratitude filled, I guess,
Right.
in a way that I often like I think prior to that point like had done nothing but punished and hated my body. So like literally the first time that I was like, damn bitch, like you really get me through this life. Like I hear you.
Yes.
I appreciate you.
I think that that's particularly relevant for like the space of wellness that we're in, which is obviously like this like non-diet space, right? Where like we're not talking about shrinking or restricting or whatever. Like if you're trying to let go of maybe the diet culture aspects of wellness, right? You're trying to not view movement as punishment. You're trying to not have food be punishment as well. Like having cannabis as something to like I just feel like it can help connect you with the joy in those things, like really help you
Mm,
establish like joyful movement routines, accept pleasure in eating, because that's something that is often a lot, there's a lot of shame in that. That's another reason why like we'll get into the munchies conversation, but like that is a huge part of the munchies situation is like I'm constantly asking people like, "Hey, any chances that when you sit down and smoke and binge eat at night, it's the first time you've experienced pleasure that day?" And they're like, "What? uh, what do you mean?" I'm like, they're like, "Oh." So yeah, I feel like if you are somebody who is passionate about like really exploring wellness from a place of radical self-acceptance and harm reduction, like all of that, then cannabis can be a great tool for that, especially for neurodivergent folks, in terms of helping you connect more with your body and find that gratitude, and develop relationships with some of these wellness practices that are rooted in like the benefits to you and your lived experience, instead of trying to like stick to some arbitrary rule book that has actually no benefit to you.
yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's that Bob Marley quote, right? Like the when you smoke the herb, it reveals you to yourself.
Literally.
Like that is exactly what fucking happens, which is why I'm always really interested when people have like a negative experience with
Like a lot
cannabis,
of
they
anxiety.
get
You're
too
like,
anxious.
I was
Which
just
I'm like,
gonna,
okay, you probably were using too much. Like that is
right.
9 times out of 10, like the
Yeah.
cause of that. But I'm also just like, and did maybe
And
something come up that you weren't ready to sit with or you
no, a
hadn't
hundred.
felt yet?
No, that was definitely my experience. Like, sure, yeah, I was using too much sometimes. The dose definitely was part of it, but also it was like during that time where I was studying for my exam, and I was just like so fucking stressed out about it, and it was like, of course I'm getting insanely anxious. I have so many fears around what comes after this exam and like what happens if I fail and all of that. Like it was totally just bringing those things to the surface. It wasn't by any means like causing this, like, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't just pulling the anxiety out of it nowhere. It was bringing to the surface what I had been like suppressing by being so hyperactive and so stressed out. So I, after that experience, after I realized that it was just bringing up what I thought it would, I started welcoming that discomfort a little bit more too, like being like,
Yeah.
okay, fine, bring it. Like, clear,
Let's see what comes up. Let's
yeah,
see if
maybe
they're coming to fight me today.
yeah, right. Maybe there's a reason that these things are coming up, and maybe I need to stop hiding from them, especially as like I can't I wonder how many times we should do like a especially as a neurodivergent counter on this pod, but like
Yeah.
especially as a neurodivergent, like I just was very disconnected, and I think that it's been a tool definitely for me to be like able to and be like, okay, what have I been suppressing? Like, because I really
Yeah.
couldn't tell you, and like oftentimes, especially if therapy isn't an accessible tool, sometimes too, like you don't have an outlet to be like having someone be like asking the right questions and putting you on the spot. Sometimes it's nice to have a tool to just nurture a little bit more awareness and presentness for that function as well.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. I think even like I use it as my part of my tarot practice and when I'm doing rituals and things like that. And it has been a huge tool in a lot
Yeah,
of those spaces as well. Because again, it like gets you out of your own way.
yeah,
Like it
literally.
clears some of the bullshit. It makes it easier for you to get downloads or, whatever you want to call it, inspiration,
Oh, I love a download.
thoughts. Yeah,
I love it. I love a
downloads be
download.
coming whenever they want. That's the
Well,
thing
that's
about
what I'm
it. Like,
telling you. That's what kept happening was I would be like, okay, I'm gonna smoke to relax after my work day, and then I would just
and you're
have
like
all
tapped
these
in.
downloads. I'm like, God damn it! Like this is not doing what I wanted it to do. And then I was like, maybe I can relax without weed, and maybe I should start using that for the like when I'm ready for a download. If we were to kind of summarize, or you specifically, not me, to summarize some of what you've observed to be some of the most like significant benefits of cannabis for neurodivergent people specifically, what are some things you would pinpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think the kind of like nervous system and emotional regulation piece is huge.
Yeah,
I think it kind of calms down that like sensory overwhelm, like allows us to quiet. I don't know
for
if you're like me
sure.
and have just like a running track of like random sound bits going at all times.
Uh,
Um,
my
and
my
it's
therapist called
multiple.
it my therapist said like it's like I'm ran by a motor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I feel like there's constantly like an education connection theme song going on in the back of my
Right.
mind. Like it quiets all of the other voices as well. And I think that's
Totally.
something that neurodivergence in particular tend to really
Yeah.
benefit from with cannabis.
Yeah.
I think something that is underrated that more neurodivergent people should know and be considering using is CBG and CBD.
Tell
Um,
us more, please.
yeah, so the cool thing about the way that CBD works in the system is that it actually will allow for an abundance of your own natural version of THC, which is an endocannabinoid or like a molecule called anandamide. And so that's like we always talk about the runner's high being a dopamine thing, and there's research showing that actually it's a rush of anandamide, which is linked to our endocannabinoid system. So it like mimics the effects of THC, but it's just like the homemade version of that.
Yeah.
When we use CBD, especially for a consistent like period of time at the right dosage, it can increase our own levels of natural
Mm,
anandamide, which just make it easier to have like appropriate dopamine responses and like dopamine type
interesting.
feelings
Yeah.
when we're doing things. So CBD and CBG also is really great for focus. THCV is another cannabinoid
That's
that
like my
can,
focus tincture. It's like
yes, oh
CBD,
my
CBD,
gosh,
and THCV.
this
Yes.
one right here, Bloom Hemp. Shout out to Bloom Hemp.
Shout out to Bloom Hemp. That is my lock-in tincture.
It's so good. And it has adaptogenic mushrooms, it has terpenes, and it tastes good, which I feel like is my biggest complaint about most tinctures that they taste like asshole.
That
This
one's
one tastes
good.
great. It's
It's
like
like
orange extract or
essential.
something.
Yeah. It just tastes like a little
Yeah.
orange essential oil.
Yeah. No, I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of that. But I think diversifying your cannabinoids is something that is like underrated for a multitude of reasons, mainly being like lack of education for one. Like that we don't educate the public enough about
Right.
options.
Yeah.
Um, But I think all of those are really great things to add into a routine. So then THC can do what it does best for you, which like
Yeah.
if that's relaxing, if that's getting downloads, if that's like creativity, like whatever it is you can, or even if it's pain management, right? Like whatever it is that THC can help you with, let that be what THC does and let these other parts of the plant carry other tools. I mean, carry other, duties
Responsibilities.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Love. Um, so definitely in like regulating some of these, or like, I don't know if regulating is the right word, but like aiding in these like dopamine responses a little bit. And like specifically CBD and CBG, right?
Mhm.
And then I would also add like the concept we talked about of just like getting more into your body and the like somatic benefits of
Yes,
it, which is
absolutely.
another neurodivergent struggle for a lot of us. I think being like I find that both whether you're understimulated or overstimulated or have done a lot of masking during the day, like having like getting more into your body in whatever way you need, which is a huge reason, and we're gonna get into the munchies, I promise, but is a huge contributor to the munchies that I see. Like the munchies specifically being overeating, is like it being just something that's stimulating your physical being. And then when you pair it with
Mhm.
weed, then it's like, oh, okay, I'm really feeling and experiencing this food right now. So I think separating it from just that experience and exploring other ways, like other opportunities to get into your physical body through
Mhm.
some joyful movement or just like general mindfulness,
Yeah.
meditation, whatever. I think it's another benefit for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Also creativity. Like we tend to be pretty multifaceted types of people
Yeah.
anyway. And I think cannabis can be a really great way to like lock in on whatever your hyper focus is. Like take that shit to the max, you know?
Yeah,
Like I think it's a great tool to be able to tap into the more creative side as well.
totally. I definitely have lived experience to back that up as well.
Yeah, I think just allowing it, like when I talk about intention setting and things like that, I also really encourage reflecting on, and this is kind of like coachy, but I think like as we're talking about like
Please.
figuring out your dosage and like what actually works well for you is like start by just checking in with yourself of like why you're using it, even if you just ask that one question before you consume, that can make a huge difference. Not in terms of changing the amount can you consume or when you consume, but just to get information about
Right.
why are you using it.
I think
And
data collection in first, just in
yeah,
general, right? Like neutral data collection.
very neutral,
Yeah.
exactly. And then figuring out like checking in, like starting at the beginning and then start checking in like during or after your session of like, did that do what I thought it was gonna do? Like if I
Yeah.
was using it because I was anxious, did I get less anxious? Did I feel relaxed? Or did I get more anxious? Like what actually
Right.
happened?
Right.
If I was using it to relax, did that you know what I mean?
Do
Like
I
what
feel restored by that, or
right.
did I just black out for a few hours and now I'm
Yeah.
still feeling, yeah,
Even with
totally.
like the food thing, like people like to smoke before they eat really good meals, before they watch a
Right.
really good movie. Like, did you enjoy it or did you fall asleep? Or like, did you not enjoy your meal or did you eat? You know what I mean? Like, whatever happened, like,
Right.
let's just pay attention to that. So
Right.
we know of like, did your experience actually match up with your intention? And then
Yeah.
we can, tweak it from there. But just
Period.
developing that like self-awareness piece, I think is something that I always encourage neurodivergent people in particular to do. Because
Yeah.
typically if we like a tool, we're
Right.
gonna
I think a lot of our introductions into it are just really passive. Like it just is that's how we kind of stumble into these like these use patterns is like not it's very rare that like from the jump we're being like, we're really intentional about this.
right.
No,
And
it's
that's
like
they don't tell us
totally.
to do that. Like that's not a thing.
No,
Like
no, like that's obviously not yeah, the common experience, but because we stumble into it kind of passively, yeah, I think there's more often than not a very huge opportunity for taking a step back and looking more closely at like intentionality and doing some data collection first to kind of see what it's even doing for you.
Mhm.
And I think related to everything that we're talking about too, I don't want to come off as like somebody who isn't acknowledging the potential cons of cannabis use, right? Like it is
Right.
obviously very beneficial for a lot of people, but also, and part of this, we'll get into why there can be harm, but there is harm sometimes in use, even just in the munchies and overeating and binge eating category, but I'm sure there's more. I'd love to hear maybe even like why people come to you, right? Who are like, hey, I'm
Mhm.
experiencing some level of harm. I don't want to like abandon the plant altogether, but I need to figure out how to make this a more positive relationship. Like, what are some of the more common kind of cons of canna use or harms that you kind of see the most often, especially neurodivergence?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that a lot of people come to me with is this feeling that they are out of control with their
Yeah,
usage. Like it's this sense of like, oh, I use it every day. It doesn't really help me get to where it used to, but like I don't want to give it up. And then I'm battling feeling addicted and I just feel like I can't get control of it. I need to reduce my use. It's immediately I need to reduce, reduce,
right,
reduce.
right.
And a lot of the time that is sometimes the result that does need to happen, but
Yeah,
we have to look at the whole picture of like again starting with that why are
right.
we using it to begin with. So I think for a lot of neurodivergent people it's being disconnected from that why
Yeah.
um is a huge, I don't know if con, but just like something to be aware of and that can cause issues
Potential
down the
harm,
line. Yeah.
right? Yeah.
I think also we don't societally talk enough about tolerance breaks. And so a lot of us, our endocannabinoid systems, especially with the way that the cannabis industry is going with like strains and products getting higher and higher THC percentages, we are starting to see some more of the negative results of that. Because like when we talk, like a lot of us in the industry are like cannabis has been used for thousands of years as medicine. Like we have all this anecdotal and like historical evidence of it being really
Right.
safe. That was with weed. That was on average
Yeah.
like 5%
Yeah.
THC, maybe
Yeah.
10% if you
Yeah.
were
It was
lucky.
it was historically bunk,
Right.
basically.
It was mostly CBD and it was mostly
Yeah.
other cannabinoids like CBG and THCV and all this other stuff.
Right.
Um, and now they are being bred to where they're
Yeah.
producing an average of 25 to 35% THC. And
Scary.
honestly, our systems were not built to receive that much THC on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
especially in high quantities. I'm not saying that THC is the bad guy here. Like, honestly, it's a product of capitalism and like
Right.
the industry because
Right.
that's what sells. So I think just like being really aware of your THC consumption and like percentages and like just really making sure that we're taking care of our endocannabinoid system functioning as a piece of it.
Plug your tea break guide, please.
Oh, fuck yeah. So, if you're interested in learning more about how tolerance breaks work, why you need them, how long to take, how to do them, you want like day by day, week by week guidance, I
Yeah.
have a like 80-page guide that walks you through all of that literally
Love.
step by step. It's like everything that I've ever wanted to know about tolerance breaks in all in one
Amazing.
place. Highly recommend checking it out. It's currently on sale on my website, thatdopecoach.com. I would love for you to check that out if you're interested in taking a tolerance break. And I
Yeah.
think the majority, especially neurodivergent people who've been consuming for quite some time, your system probably needs a break.
Right. I know
And so,
anytime that I have a client who's coming to me with and presenting harms in that regard and they have like a long history of use, daily use, I'm always like, "Hey, when's the last time you like took a tea break?" And they're like,
mhm.
"Couldn't tell you." And I'm like, "See,
Yeah,
I'm not going to be prescriptive about it because this isn't my scope, but I can pretty much guarantee you need one.
yeah, yep.
Consider."
And again, like I think people hear tea breaks and it brings up, at least for a
Ah,
lot of folks, that like I'm
right.
addicted, I'm overusing, like it's the
Right.
shame spiral piece that comes up. And it really is, again, a lot of that shame is not ours to begin with and does
Right.
not belong to us, means we don't need to carry it.
Yeah.
Um, but I think normalizing and getting tea breaks to be like a regular part of your routine can
Yeah.
be really helpful because then you don't have to take a month long or 2 weeks.
Right.
Like you can just
Right.
do 2 to 3 days a month. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have
Right.
to be
Nothing
anything
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah.
So I think that is a piece that is like a harm that happens, but also a solution for that.
Right.
I think some other harms. Oh goodness. I think honestly, one of the biggest ones I see is like making kind of what you said earlier about like I'm only going to smoke on the weekends. Like people will make boundaries for themselves around their cannabis use that are not based in anything.
Yeah, and like they're
Yeah.
not pushing forward their intentions at all. They're just like
Right.
sometimes working in contrast to them, I would think.
Right. And so I do a lot of like boundary and intention setting with my clients because they're setting these goals, they're setting these like I'm using too much, I need to cut down my use, without actually knowing how much they're using in the first place and like
Right.
not being really clear on if it's helping them or not. 9 times out of 10, it's rooted to that little voice in your head that's rooted in
Stigma.
stigma. It's internalized
Right.
stigma. And I think that's a piece. I think again, like relying only on THC is something that we should not do. This plant, especially when you use whole flower medicine, like there's so many great benefits to it. I honestly really recommend people, and this is gonna get probably some pushback, but one thing I always try to do with my clients is, especially if they're like an inhale or like smoker, is to take one puff and give yourself 10 minutes for it to kick in before
Wow.
you take another one. And that's one where, like, when I first heard that tip, I was like, fuck no. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not doing that. That's ridiculous. I don't know why, but I had like a very strong like aversion to doing that.
But I
And
think if
parts,
there if I think if advice like that does trigger this like strong resistance, that even that is something to get curious about, right? Like
yeah.
just in terms of like what relationship you formed with it. If it's like so if that piece of advice is actually potentially in alignment with your intentions that you claim, then like hold on.
Yeah. Let's we have the reaction can happen, but then let's
Yeah, let's
look
think
at
about why
it
you had a visceral reaction to that.
yeah,
Um,
truly.
yeah, that's a
But it
great
makes a
piece of
huge
advice.
difference because it also like I think for some people like especially when your tolerance is high, you may or may not really feel the effects from that one hit.
Right.
But for a lot of people, and I always like to use a pencil or something as an example, but like say if you're like smoking a joint and you take one puff, two puff, three puff, four puff, maybe five puffs, and then you're like, okay, I'm pretty high, I'm gonna stop now. You're probably high because we say that it hits the bloodstream and like you feel the effects instantly, but it can take up to 10 minutes for the full effects from each inhale to actually kick in. So what you're likely feeling is like puff one,
One
maybe
or
puff
two.
two.
This is literally your fullness cues function the same way. And so I talk all the time about taking breaks for with eating, not to get yourself to eat less by any means, right? Not to get yourself to smoke less, but to get your the um, basically to like give your body time to catch up. Like
Yeah,
just give your body some time to actually process the food that you ate and communicate to you that it's full or communicate
exactly.
how full it is feeling. Because yeah, like usually what happens is people eat really quickly and then 10, 20 minutes after they stop eating is when they actually experience their final level of fullness, and it's usually like, whoa, I probably
Should have stopped.
should have stopped sooner, but I didn't give my body enough time to communicate that to me. So totally understand
Yeah.
that same function with.
Well, that makes a ton of sense also because I'm pretty sure our endocannabinoid system has like two systems of receptors called CB1 and CB2. And CB1, I'm pretty sure is also like a huge part of like appetite regulation. So it really and that's the one that THC interacts the most with. So it really actually makes a ton of sense. And it's
That
like
it's slow.
a very similar sort of, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea of like, yeah, just slowing down a little bit. And again, not with this intention of I need to have less, but just I want to be connected with how it's affecting me in
Yeah.
real time, so I can make informed decisions about how much to consume. I think another like potential harm that I see, and again, this has to do usually with like the patterns of use not being in alignment, but like for neurodivergent folks specifically, I think a lot of times it starts as a tool for rest, relaxation,
Yep.
decompression, unmasking, and turns into um, disconnecting and numbing and
Mm.
like blacking out or whatever. And not fully blacking out, but like we use that verbiage a lot with my clients. It's like, oh, I got home, had a shit day. I'm gonna smoke a fuck ton, and then I'm gonna plop, and I'm gonna grab whatever food is gonna bring me comfort, and then I'm gonna disassociate. Essentially, it's like
Hmm.
disassociation is obviously a better word than blacking out, but yeah, I find that to be a really common one that my clients are experiencing, and I think again it has a lot to do with obviously right like their patterns of use not being in alignment, but also just this putting too much emphasis on weed to fix the issue without zooming out and looking at like your the rest of your day. Like, wait, like is there opportunities that I'm missing to like rest and restore and take care of this burnout, prevent it, instead of just
Mhm.
relying on cannabis as the solution, I guess.
Yeah,
Kind of
cannabis could
the
not be your tool for everything.
right,
Like it's not the selection for selection, the
right,
solution.
right. It's supposed to be this web of like wellness habits, I guess you could say. And yeah, I just
Mhm.
find a lot of times my clients are very disconnected to other aspects of catering to like burnout prevention,
Mhm.
unmasking rituals, like that type of thing. They're just kind of like, okay, I neglected, I've had about 15 hours of self neglect, and now I'm gonna just smoke to feel better.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I mean, if you did that kind of neutral data collection, right, and we're stepping back and saying, is this in alignment with my intentions before, during, and after, you would probably get that, you would see that's not the case. You step back and
Yeah.
go, this is not doing what I want it to be doing for me. But
And
yeah,
being
I see.
radically honest with that reflection, right? Like from a
Yeah,
space of compassion, from a space of neutrality, of just like, this is just information for me to use. Because I think even when we start to ask ourselves those questions, sometimes there will be like a panic of like, oh no, like I am, like it goes, I think so many of us that direct path of like, I am addicted.
and like labeling everything, like labeling it, right, like being like, oh yeah, I have am an addict, instead of just being like, this is something that's I'm experiencing. And also why I love the just the spirit of harm reduction in general is like, especially when it comes to wellness and accessibility and neurodivergence and other forms of accessibility needs too, like the likelihood of you developing a approach to self-care and wellness that is completely free of harm, it is like not very likely, especially if there's, accessibility concerns. And not just like, I'm not just talking about neurodivergence or like disabilities. I'm also talking about financial accessibility and time accessibility. And like, we live under the crushing weight of capitalism. Like, there is harm in that. So like, I think a lot of times it's like, oh, I have to develop this like perfect routine, this perfect approach to self-care and wellness, and if there's any amount of harm, then it's not right, instead of being like, how do I just reduce it as much as possible, in like given the constraints that I'm working with, in terms of
Mhm.
accessibility.
Yep.
So that's huge. That's in not just cannabis, but food, nutrition, movement, all of it.
All of the things.
Yeah.
I think one more harm, or not harm, but like a thing that I wish that more people paid attention to is we talked about terpenes already, but like paying attention to what strains
Yeah,
make you feel
I
what.
need to be better about that.
And because I think it depends, like, if you're in a space where you have like the legal systems, you can know more about your terpene profiles, or if you're in a space where you have like a legacy market, it's a little bit more difficult typically because those aren't as tested. But like,
Yeah.
if you have a strain that you try and you're like, damn, like I cleaned my whole kitchen and like went for a walk and like got groceries and like was super active, pay attention to that. So that's not the strain that you use when you're ready to go to sleep or like relax
Right.
and eat something.
Or like in the opposite, right? Like, I used
Right.
this strain and some harm came from it, and therefore there's something wrong with me and my like what I have going on, and all cannabis is harmful to me. It's like, well,
Maybe
wait,
that strain was just not the one for you.
maybe that strain's not the one for you, especially if you've experienced benefits in other
Right.
contexts. Then like, yeah, it probably has a lot more to do with the strain than we're giving it credit for. And that definitely goes for the munchies. I know we're close on time, so I don't want to take up too much time, but the munchies is definitely part of this conversation as well. Terpene profiles can have a profound impact on the way that people experience hunger and fullness.
Right.
And I've found that, along with treating the root causes of overeating, which I'm going to say this before I give you the mic on munchies, like, if you struggle with overeating while you're high, before you turn and look at weed and blame it for a single fucking thing, I need you to consider the root causes of overeating. If you are under eating throughout the day, sporadically eating, you're out of touch with your hunger and your fullness cues, and missing opportunities to eat throughout the day, you're neglecting pleasure and satisfaction in your eating, you're restrictive in your eating behaviors in any capacity, eating good foods, or trying to eat good foods and then being bad in the
Hmm.
evenings, like rationing specific foods for the evenings, or you have an intense emotional relationship with food, potentially related to neurodivergence, like need for stimulation, dopamine, etc. That is what's causing your overeating. And when it comes to the weed, there's some stuff Jabria will tell you right now to consider, but it's probably not the cannabis. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
So when we talk about the munchies,
Yeah.
they're typically all people tend to blame THC as the scapegoat for what causes appetite increase, and it does play a role to a certain
Yeah.
extent, because we talked a little bit earlier about the endocannabinoid, like the CB1 receptors. THC binds directly to that, and that is also the system that regulates your hunger cues, so it can kind of reawaken or like increase hunger. Which, especially if you have not eaten throughout the day, like your body is going to be less receptive to any sort of like cues around satiety or things like that because you also were like needing nutrients at the same
Right.
time. So typically, when also like terpenes can have a huge effect on like the type of experience that you have. Like there are some terpenes like myrcene, beta-caryophyllene, limonene that are known to increase appetite, whereas you have some like humulene and I think pinene are known to help like decrease appetite or at least like regulate appetite.
Right.
THCV also is a cannabinoid that people annoyingly called like diet weed because everything's obsessed with the fucking diet culture.
Right.
But it has been shown to help regulate your appetite.
Yeah.
So that's a really great cannabinoid to just like keep in rotation or like have
Yep.
strains that are high in THCV. But all of them do kind of play an effect with this understanding of like appetite and hunger. Like they all come
Yeah.
up as a part of that. So
Yep.
it's just something to be aware of, right? Like if you know, like you said, if you know you're gonna smoke and you haven't eaten all day, like maybe eat something before, or
Right.
maybe make sure the meal that you're having like has a bunch of the nutrients that you're trying to get in. I'm
Right.
a big fan of like a grazing plate. So
Yeah.
like if I will intentionally pick like I used to have like a little Snapple box, but like I'll just make a plate of like little bites of things that are like different textures, different flavors, all that kind of stuff, and just like enjoy the fuck out of it. Like use
Yeah.
your weed to enjoy what you're
Well,
eating.
and that's usually the intention, right? Like when people are like, "Oh, I'm gonna smoke this and then I'm gonna go eat," even if like whether it's overeat or not, like the intention is to enjoy that food a lot. So like enjoy it, especially for neurodivergence. If texture is a huge part of the equation, then like
Yes.
making sure you have a lot of these, especially because obviously if you're elevated, then the somatic experience of eating is going to be more significant. So like textural preferences are usually going to be like louder. So making sure that what you're choosing is like stimulating texturally, can be like let it be enjoyable. I think what I would advice that I despise when it comes to overeating, especially with the munchies, is like, well, just eat like a shit ton of asparagus. You know what I mean? Where they're like, oh, just eat
Yeah.
like no, like that's not
Eat all the
connecting with
lettuce
your.
you
It's
want. Like fuck
yeah,
off.
yeah, right. Like just eat like a rabbit or whatever. It's like, well, no, like you part of overcoming binge eating or overeating is connecting to and accepting that that food does bring you joy and that food does bring you pleasure. So lean into that. It's and experience that fully and presently. I think is also part of the equation, right? Are you sitting
Yeah.
there and having the munchies and disassociating and then all of
Correct.
a sudden you look down and all the food's gone, or are you taking every bite and being like, this is so fucking good, and like experiencing it fully and being
Enjoying it.
present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge
But
fan.
yeah, don't shy away from experiencing the pleasure and joy from food, because that is part of overcoming binge eating, is accepting that food does bring you pleasure. Because if you hold shame about food being pleasurable to you, then you're going to keep having this idea that like you're being good or you're being bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
then, yeah, just picking strains that make sense for the type of
yes.
experience you want to have. That
Yes.
applies across the board when it comes to munchies, when it comes to
Right.
creativity, when it comes to work, like whatever it is. Figure out the strains that work best for you. If you want to like really go in on a meal and just like fuck it up and love
Yeah.
it, pick the strain that's going to help you do that. Like pick something that has maybe more humul or more like beta caryophyllene or something. Like figure out what terpenes do that for you. Because
Right.
again, like these are generic, not generic, but like generally what these terpenes will tend to do with appetite. But like everybody is different for sure. So just
Right.
have fun figuring out like what works for you. Like I
Get
think
a journal, perhaps.
yeah. I think kind of as we are very indoctrinated under like pharmacology and like needing or like used to like one pill at a specific dose creating a specific outcome. It's like with weed, it just doesn't work like that. So
No.
like let's lean into some of the fun around like figuring out what actually works for us.
Yeah.
Um, that is probably like one of my bigger pieces of advice, bigger pieces of advice that I think is important as a part of this like whole conversation.
Yeah, is leaning. Well, and I think that's can be a challenge in general for neurodivergent people to lean into that chaos and messiness and not have such
Mhm.
a black and white view of this topic. It can be easier said than done, but it's a challenge worth taking, I think.
Big time.
And
Mm.
period. And look at 30040 on the dot. We finished.
Crushed it.
Love that for us. Jabria, where can they find you?
Yes. So you can follow me on Instagram at craftedcancoach. It used to be canna, but I had to take the A out of it because algorithm's stupid, and hates cannabis. But you could also find me at thatdopecoach.com. Those are the platforms where I am the most active, but am going to be expanding onto YouTube soon. So definitely
Woo!
stay tuned for that as well.
Yay! Thank you so much for sharing all of your insight. This was
Yay.
such a slay conversation. I feel like a lot of people will benefit from listening to this, and I appreciate you taking the time to share your expertise with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us all the time. I've learned
Woo!
so much just from viewing your content. I think about fiber more than I ever have in my entire life.
Period. Okay, if you take one nutrition related thing away from me, it should be fiber.